Welcome back to Power On Weekly for the week of January 11th through the 17th. My name is Irving Legend. I am your host. Alongside me is your co-host,
Allie Mayhem.
Allie. Yeah. Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year?
Happy New Year.
Like you said, Happy New Year, y'all.
I probably did. Happy New Year to everybody. I hope you guys had a good New Year, and 2021 has treated you well so far. I can't believe we're already like 3 weeks in, almost, basically, when this episode comes out.
What the heck?
Just like
where'd this month go?
Who knows? Yeah, but I hope you guys have a good year, and I hope this year treats you well. We took a couple weeks. It's okay. We took a couple of weeks off to kind of relax and re-energize. Plus, at the beginning of the year, there was like really nothing going on, so we just took it easy, and we were just coasting from then. Yeah, but man, this week we got some news, Allie. Not oh, were you gonna say something?
No.
Oh.
Mm-mm.
Some exciting news for those who are fans of Star Wars, Lucasfilm properties in general, and also in general, just a lot of things to kind of break down what happened this week. The big news this week that Lucasfilm's Games was announced, basically a new kind of like, not even a studio, but just like oversight.
Like a subsidiary?
Yeah, like a
I think that's the right vocabulary.
Sure, yeah.
It sounds right, but I could be wrong.
I think you're right. It's basically like an overseer of their properties, basically, is kind of what I'm getting out of it. That was announced on Sunday, and then the next day, on the 11th, Bethesda announced that they were making an Indiana Jones game. Which, if you hear that right, Bethesda, that's not a part of the EA's property. Obviously, EA has made a deal with Disney back when they got acquired. Lucasfilm got acquired in 2012. That they were going to make exclusive games for Disney, or for just Star Wars games in general, for 10 years, basically, which we'll get to in just a bit as well. But that was announced on the 11th.
Not that weird, though, since it's not Star Wars. Because, right, EA was exclusively Star Wars franchise, though. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah. But at the same time, I mean, we'll get to it in a bit, but I don't think they really had a lot of chances to make a Indiana Jones or any other franchise anyways. No. And then, so Bethesda by Machine Games, the people who did Wolfenstein, the reboot for Wolfenstein. And then the next day, Ubisoft's team, Massive, who did The Division, basically, they announced that they were also working on an open world Star Wars game. So we're already like 2-3 days into the week, and we were getting some huge news about these things. There's a lot of things to break down here, Allie. A lot of business stuff that we need to talk about. A lot of things about what this means for EA as a company, being able to like still do Star Wars games, but like not be the only ones that are doing the Star Wars games. But before we get to that, an alarm. But before we get to that, we need to talk about LucasArts, which used to be, the main like subsidiary, like you said, or developers that used to make games back in the day for Star Wars before the buyout, before the dark times, or 2012, basically.
The dark times, also known as the Disney times.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ooh. So before 2013, they were making a ton of games. They were actually right in the middle of making one game called 1313, which, with that deal going through, and LucasArts being shut down completely, they just stopped production on that game, which is a shame, because that game was supposed to be a bounty hunter, like origin story of like Boba Fett, like set in 1313, like what's it called, in Coruscant. Really cool.
Well, they should have released 1313 in 2013, and they would have been out the gate before the studio closed.
Well, yeah. That would have been the thing, but they got bought out in 2012, and then like they only showed the gameplay at 2012, so that means that the game was still a little bit in development. But yeah, no, if only it came out in 2000.
Yeah, if only they had aimed for those, those numerical gold mines. Yeah.
So before that, though, LucasArts made a ton of games, obviously Star Wars and Indiana Jones, all the mainline Star Wars games you can remember, Rogue Squadron, all those Rogue Squadron games, pod racing games, most like, Pod Racer being the first one that came out, all the Lego Star Wars games in conjunction with obviously Lego. The Battlefront series, the beloved Battlefront series, Jedi Knight series, that series was amazing. Force Unleashed was really interesting, really cool. KOTOR, obviously done by BioWare, one of the most beloved BioWare games that they've made. Republic Commando, and a bunch of point-and-click adventure games from Tim Schafer, who he is the person who does Psychonauts as well. So he and his team did Full Throttle, Day of the Tentacle, the Grim Fandango series, as well as Grim Fandango the game, and the series of what's it called, the Monkey Island series. So all those point and click adventure games were all under Lucasfilm, and obviously some Indiana Jones games as well. So they were clearly making games for themselves, from their property. But when the Disney buyout came through, Disney put their foot down and they were like, nope, we're just going to take creative power over all of this, and everything that was, they basically shelved a ton of content that was like expanded universe lore and everything, threw it out the window and just called it legacy, basically. Or I think it was legacy content or something like that, but it wasn't canon in the end. So that sucked a lot. Now, when EA made the deal, EA was in the middle of a ton of games. This was 2013. They don't really have a lot of studios, to be honest. They had DICE, BioWare, Criterion, EA Sports Team, Maxis, and Motive, PopCap, which they do a lot of mobile games, and Respawn as well. So as soon as the acquisition happened, they didn't have a lot of teams that were able to just make a Star Wars game like off the bat. And we talked about, we found out earlier this week that Battlefield 4 was actually one of the games that was being released in 2013. And because of that game, and because of how poorly received the launch of that game was and how buggy it was, they needed to delay future games like Mirror's Edge, Catalyst, and Battlefront in order to fix Battlefield 4. So obviously DICE wasn't ready to do a Battlefront from the get-go, and Battlefront finally did release in 2015, but that game was very shallow. It was it had minimal gameplay. It had like minimal maps, no campaign. It only had the original trilogy, and they did some DLC later on for Rogue One when the movie came out in 2016, but that was like a year later. And a year later, they did a Battlefront 2 as well. But we all know how that released.
The fact that they didn't just continue DLC on an already built game.
Yeah.
Or didn't. Why do you need two? This is just where I get really mad at EA. Yeah. When you do second releases, it's because it's been years in between, or it's because graphical stuff has come so far that you have to build a new engine, or I'm not sure, you have to build a new foundation for some reason.
Yeah.
Why are you doing a Battlefront 1 and 2 years later releasing a second one? Do DLC.
Yeah. I
hate EA. See, these are the things that just piss me off with EA. It looks so greedy. You want me to spend another $60 instead of supporting a game that could easily just be supported with additional content?
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
No, it's fine. No, because
it makes me so mad. It's a waste of time. It was a waste of time in their contract.
No, for sure. And to go off of it, being greedy, the biggest issue Battlefront 2 had was the microtransactions. Oh yeah, the microtransactions and the loot box system that they had. If you remember, the loot boxes were basically if you can buy a bunch of stuff and you would get cards that would just make your character more powerful, and you can essentially buy your way into getting the heroes too, like Darth Vader and stuff like that, or you can just play the game normally, but it would take over 50 hours in order to unlock that.
Yeah,
it was really egregious, and it's so funny because they took that out right before launch, 2 or 3 weeks before launch, but that's all everybody was talking about.
Yeah, I remember.
Was just how greedy it was and how gross it was, and they kind of remedied it a little bit, but the the damage had already been done by then. In the end, in later on in the years, they actually made Battlefront 2 really good, and right now it's really, really solid. And speaking of, if you play on PC and want Battlefront 2, it's free right now on the Epic Game Store up until January 21st. So if you're watching this, you got like 2 days basically, but it's free. Like, you can just get it.
Okay, but what about Battlefront 1? Did they literally just build a game in a year or two and then just abandon ship? Like,
yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
How, like, it's great that they're still supporting Battlefront 2, but how shitty would you feel if you bought that game and then it was like, oh, well, toss this out the window, forget this fan base, now we need you to come over here and spend more. Like, it's a shitty thing to do, and it's a shitty feeling, and it's again, just expand on what you have.
Yeah, it's kind of like I know this is, it's EA, but it's sore subject, but like Sims also does things similar like that as well. I feel like that's why you're also really frustrated with this as well, is because you felt that personally with a game that a franchise that you thought was great, but then they did the opposite. They actually dumbed it down even further for future games.
The issue is it's like, I see it with franchises I like, and then I see it with other franchises as well, because they do all the sports games and stuff too, right? Get constantly yearly reboots and constant buy this, buy that, buy these players. Like if I'm going to spend $60 every single year on a brand new copy, you should be giving me everything. I shouldn't have to buy a $60 game, buy a bunch of add-ons, and then be expected to buy another game literally 12 months later. Like, I don't know. Like, I know it's like a really like random thing to just be like stuck on, but like, I didn't even realize that they had done 2 Battlefronts that close together. And I'm just so fed up with EA, and I'm like, well, we're going to talk about later where the EA doesn't have this contract anymore is the best thing that Lucasfilms could have done. Honestly, I think anyone who is stupid enough to get stuck in a contract with EA at this point is an idiot. Like, the company has literally no respect from its players. It has no respect in the industry. Like, I mean, how long ago were they the worst company in America to work for?
Yeah.
Was it the world?
I don't know, maybe.
Worst company, though. Worst company to work for. And they haven't done anything to improve it. Like, is it like me personally, I've gotten to a point where if it's an EA franchise, it would have to be something really amazing for me to buy it. Yeah. I don't like, and then when I look at this stuff, it like confirms that, like, or it reminds me of like, oh yeah, like, I've gotten to a point where I won't even buy any more Sims packs, to be honest. Yeah. Like, I just,
for sure.
So
if you're
icky.
if you're counting, we're in 2016, 3 years later, and there's only been 2 games basically that have come out, and they're both essentially the same game.
Yep.
And nothing else was
for $120.
Well, I was gonna say nothing else was released, then, but they also did a Galaxy, like Star Wars Galaxy, like mobile game that they did. But I don't really count that much because it's just a gacha game basically.
Did you include in this list as well the Sims Disney?
That doesn't technically count as a but. I mean,
it should. Yeah. I mean, they only were able to do that because they had the contract.
Yeah. It wasn't until 2019 that Jedi Fallen Order was released. This was done by Respawn.
Wait, when? 19?
2019, yeah. And that was actually late 2019 as well, because the Game Awards didn't even have it in their like Game of the Year category or anything like that, because it was technically, or some outlets didn't have it in there because it was too
late
into the year to count it. So,
why did I think you got that game late? I didn't realize you almost got that game at launch.
No, I got it. Yeah, I got it last year for my birthday. So it was.
But what I mean, like, is I thought it had been out for like a while. Oh, no. I didn't realize it had like.
Yeah, no,
a few months.
It was a few months, yeah. That was released with high praise, really good. I mean, anything Respawn has done so far,
Respawn's great.
They're really good. So like, it's great that they got their chance in order to do it. A lot of people are a little skeptical at first when they heard the announcement at E3, but the game turned out really, really good. A really good Metroidvania game, really good platformer, like combat, Dark Souls-ish game. I really enjoyed it. So during obviously this deal, let's talk about Respawn real quick as to why it took them that long to do, Star Wars. we just talked about it now. Titanfall 1 was released as a launch window for Xbox and Xbox One and everything at the beginning of the generation. Then they followed it up with Titanfall 2, and then they also did Apex Legends early 2019 before they also released, Jedi Fallen Order. So after Titanfall 2, they basically almost split the team in half and just did Apex and Fallen Order.
And Apex has that continuous support and
service,
so they probably need a lot of hands on that consistently to keep that content rolling through.
Yeah. So they did that, and then the most recent release was last year. Squadrons was released, done by Motive Studio, who previously helped out DICE with Battlefront 2's Space Combat, and also Criterion. Criterion did stuff for Space Combat as well. So this is a relatively new-ish studio. But like Criterion did, and if you're wondering about Criterion, why they didn't make like a Star Wars racing game or anything like that, because they were making Need for Speed games. They were making Need for Speed Heat, Need for Speed, the reboot of Underground, basically, and then they did all the other Underground 2, basically. Yeah, so what I'm trying to get at is that EA was not prepared for this, right?
Wasted so much time.
They were pushed into a deal when all of their studios were currently working on something, whether it was Battlefield from DICE or all the Need for Speed games, or Maxis doing Maxis things and EA Sports doing EA Sports things. Like, we're not gonna see I don't know, something, I can't even think of anything like sports related in Star Wars, but you're not gonna see that from a team, So it's just really weird that they rushed into this deal, and it just goes to show that like limiting your pool of like, especially as a huge of a franchise as Star Wars is, limiting it to just one team isn't really gonna get you anywhere. And I think that's why 8 years later, we're seeing this now. This is still blowing your mind.
I just got so much. All this is reaffirming is EA agreed. They were like, "Oh, yeah, we're really busy, but that contract over there, pass it on over. Exclusive though.
Mm-hmm.
Only we can do it. Has to be one of our studios." And the thing is, it's just like, it's a 10-year contract, and this is all you have to show for it. That's pathetic. And it's not like it's under one. Like, they have what, 1, 2, 3. Well, skip those two.
Well, four
5, 6. No, they have 6 studios that don't do just exclusive content. Like,
you mean excluding like Maxis and esports?
In the sports. Yeah. Like, you have all of these studios.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, you sign a 10-year contract, either have the staff ready and available for it, or create a new studio.
Yeah.
Given because there's a few ways that this could have gone. Create a brand new studio that is going to prove themselves. Take some like good talent from these other studios, bring them in. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have 10 years to create games.
Yeah.
Have them focus on these games. Have them focus on these Star Wars games and get a few things out. Like, the worst that's going to happen is 10 years down the line when that contract's up, you dissolve the studio. Best case scenario, these teams had the time and focus to create really amazing games. Maybe you lose your Star Wars contract, but now they have a proven record. Now you have a brand new studio again who is going to be able to then move on to some other things and create other amazing like franchises. Like, that's just personally what I don't get, but I think it all goes back into money. We don't want to spend the money to create another team to focus on this, but why wouldn't you? Because if they had these teams still work on these games here that they wanted them to, but then also had another team working on 3 games in those 10 years, like, could have been like, I don't know. It just seems like a really wasted opportunity to like get more people work, put more people on jobs. And like I said, like, you could have potentially ended up with like, if the studio was able to do it and prove it, you maybe now have another studio to work with to create more stuff in the future.
Yeah.
Just my thought.
Yeah, and I also think that the deal also hindered EA from being able to release quality content as well, because they had to spread their teams out a little more thinner. Because if you look at it, like Battlefield 4 had to take a huge overhaul because of it, And if you have then some of the parts of the team from DICE now doing Battlefront 2 and Battlefront, the original Battlefront and Battlefront 2, then you look at a game like Battlefield 1, basically, that was not well received. That was really shallow as well. Even if you look at Battlefield 5, too, that one's a little shallow as well. Well, at launch it was. And you look at that just kind of shows that it's like they had to spread their team out even more, so they lost focus on their major franchise. So now that this deal is coming to a close, we might see their existing franchises benefit a little bit more from this. I'm like, I already know that like the next Battlefield 6, they stopped doing anything for Battlefront 2 right now, the Star Wars Battlefront 2. They stopped adding content to it like last year, and had their entire team just focused directly on Battlefield 6. So it just goes to show that like it's not well, when the game comes out, we'll see how well it is and maybe if it did hinder it or not. But like just that statement alone just kind of makes me think like, yeah, like this they bit off a little more than they could chew, and they maybe lost a little focus on a little bit of quality in their existing games because of this deal as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, no, exactly. It sounds to me like they took a contract and then tried to split teams. Because honestly, like the idea and the layout of what they had made sense. Mm-hmm. You're taking your Battlefield team and making a Battlefront game. It's a Star Wars version of that game.
Yeah.
So I don't think that necessarily they needed to not create these games as well. But it does definitely, it also is very clear, though, that they took like their team of 5. Obviously, it's not just 5, but their team of 5. And they said, okay, well, normally we'd have all 5 of you on this, but we need 2 of you to split off and do this version and 3 of you to split off and do this version. And it seems like it hindered a lot of things. It hindered the amount of time for them to make things and do things, and the time to do things good. Where, again, I'm like, I think that these games should have still happened. Should have only been one Battlefront. Simple, hands down. At the end of the day, that should have been the focus on that team for the Star Wars part. Mm-hmm. Respawn did great with what they did. The squadrons, that's the style of game they do. Like, so the teams they made perfect sense. Mm-hmm. They just dropped the ball somewhere. And then, like I said, and also where I just see them dropping the ball is just, why didn't you just make a separate team to focus on something else? Maybe something like creating like a Bungie. Yeah. Where Bungie's whole focus for 10 years has been Destiny. Yeah. Whether it be Destiny 1, 2, or 3, but it's been just that one franchise. That's been their whole focus. Why wouldn't you have created another team where the whole focus was maybe a trilogy of Star Wars games or something different from what they were doing with these other teams? Like I said, despite everything, what they assigned who made perfect sense. Yeah. It goes just into it would have taken a lot of pressure off of them if they had another team that was focusing on that franchise. That's just my opinion. Because then it wouldn't have been as much pressure on the Battlefront games. It wouldn't have been as much pressure on, they would have gotten a lot more done with a lot less pressure everywhere. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, yeah. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the story of the deal. And now, bringing this back around to the news, what does this mean then? What does this mean? This means that since EA's deal is coming to a close in 2 years, Lucasfilms Games is already collaborating with other devs and trying to get their IP or their franchise out there into more developers' hands in order to create other Star Wars games.
Which shows that they were also not very, in my opinion, happy with the lack of games that came out for their franchise that was huge over the past 8 years.
Yeah, I think we, during the Disney era that we're still in, obviously, but the beginning of the Disney era, it was very much like new Star Wars content. It was the perfect chance to be able to just throw everything out there, and they kind of tried to do that with the movies, and they kind of failed a little bit with Solo. And they shelved like the Boba Fett movie and the Obi-Wan movie and all these other movies that they were going to do yearly in between like each main, what's it called? After this recent trilogies kind of bomb that they did, they kind of had to, reevaluate everything. And it wasn't until The Mandalorian recently that they kind of gotten a little resurgence. So I think that's also why they're doing this as well. They're trying to catch the wins.
Pick up.
Yeah, they're trying to catch the wins under their sail from the Mandalorian, and then just kind of the interest in Star Wars due to it. Especially expanded universe stuff like the Ahsoka storyline and like Clone Wars and Bad Batch and all that other stuff. So I think that's why they're also trying to get other teams also involved. So now they can actually pick up and do everything together, as opposed to just it kind of tying them down because of EA's lack of ability to be able to just take their franchises from the get-go like they wanted to.
It definitely feels like an era of learning for Star Wars and for Disney, because like you said, the trilogy didn't do as good as they thought. Obviously, financially, huge success, but it didn't hit people the same way. And like you said, The Mandalorian, I think, is totally shifting, like you said, shifting sales. And I think it's just interesting if you think about it and the timing of everything. All those movies didn't do as great as they thought. These Star Wars games weren't coming out as much as they thought. So it's interesting that it's like, as The Mandalorian is shifting the Star Wars universe and potentially taking it in the right direction where people actually wanted it to go, that maybe this shift in contracts and this shift in other studios stepping in will also kind of, like you said, push that sale forward for the games as well. It's just kind of interesting how it's like, it seemed like the whole front, games and movies and shows, they had this like 8 years of like, all right, well, this is not really working. Let's switch things up. So, I mean, it kind of gives a lot of hope for the next few years of Star Wars that maybe they'll kind of fix everything and make people care again.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, this also doesn't mean that EA is completely done with making Star Wars games. I feel like Respawn really, really set the stage. They
hit it out of the park.
Yeah, they really did. So, like, we already know that, like, Fallen Order 2 is a thing that's happening, and it's definitely going to be it's being worked on right now, and it's going to be released. So, and the EA also tweeted out pretty much like as soon as all the news was coming out, they're like, "Hey, we're still here. We're still making Star Wars games. We're still relevant. Don't forget about us." So,
well, just real quick, that's the big flaw in this whole thing was the exclusivity contract. Yeah. And it was the greed of, give us your exclusive franchise for 10 years. We'll do great things. Y'all didn't prove you could. Doesn't mean that the games were shit. It doesn't mean that what they produced wasn't good. It just really, I mean, if I'm giving you my entire franchise, though, and you gave me 4 games, I would not be very happy.
Yeah.
So I think that this is just the best thing is EA should still be working on some things. But I think opening it up to other studios is fair on both sides. Like, you guys didn't really deliver as much as you probably should have in that time. You guys didn't give it, like I said, if you'd given me an entire studio dedicated to my franchise, maybe I would have continued that contract.
Yeah.
But you guys, they just kind of just didn't do enough to be like, hey, see why we should keep this exclusive contract? Yeah. I think them opening up to other studios is great. But that's funny that they're just like, by the way, like, we're not out of the game.
Yeah.
like, we're still here. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think them opening up to other studios and opening that contract up when that ends is the best thing they could do.
Yeah. So let's talk about the 2 things that they announced. Indiana Jones by Machine Games, the people who did Wolfenstein. It's all first person. Wolfenstein is the reboot is really good. It's really crazy. And it's just funny that I guess Machine Games just
hates Nazis.
Really hate Nazis. Yeah.
Really hate Nazis. That's good. We need more of that in America.
Definitely. And we, Indiana Jones, that's why, because Indiana Jones also hates Nazis. So if you didn't get the joke, I just
Are you talking to the audience or me?
No.
Okay. It's like, I got the joke. I joked on the joke.
I will say though, it's a weird property. And not in the sense of like it's not beloved or it's not like, huge or anything. It is, but I think it was. I think it was during its prime. But if you ask anybody now,
what happened to my screen?
Oh, I don't know. If you ask anybody now what
their
opinions are on Indiana Jones, I think the first thing that comes to mind is just the ride at Disneyland, right?
Well, yeah, for us. Well, I'm not. I can't even say I'm a younger generation because I definitely was close to a time of being able to like enjoy Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
But okay, right. But here's the weird thing: is it's like all these franchises that like are like connected with Disney now, like. they didn't play Indiana Jones or Star Wars on the Disney Channel. So like,
yeah,
I don't know. It like, so going to like Disneyland, it was always the Indiana Jones ride was always kind of weird. Cause again, unless you had someone specifically go out and get you a tape to watch it, I never saw it. I know my mom grew up on it, you know, in the theaters at that time, but yeah, no, I mean,
yeah,
I don't know what I'm getting at. But
no, yeah.
I think I'm getting at the fact that like I'm in my early 30s and it was still a little before my time.
Yeah, and even they haven't obviously done the Star Wars treatment of like a new trilogy and all the franchise and all that other stuff to Indiana Jones. They did, you know, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but I'm pretty sure that was before the acquisition of Disney anyways. And they're currently working on Indy 5 right now, but it's just not as much of a juggernaut as Star Wars, and it doesn't really hold a lot of like nostalgic feelings from like
for people who game
nowadays.
I think that's what it is. It's generationally. Like, it's not.
Yeah, because if you think about it too, like how many people do you know think like, you know, like, oh, have you ever played the Indiana Jones game back in like from LucasArts? Like, you know, something of like Atlantis, I think, or something is one of the games, but it's like they're not, even the games aren't really that memorable. So I don't really hear a lot of people clamoring for another Indiana Jones games. And it's also funny because like we've already gotten the kind of Indiana Jones games anyways through Uncharted and Tomb Raider. And
bingo, that's the problem.
Yeah, and those franchises were huge, and they set their names for themselves using that kind of formula of an archaeologist, adventurer, like here, you know, all this other stuff. And they did it so well that like you kind of forget that that's kind of where it all came from, right? Was because of Indiana Jones. So just for it to be coming back, it's just a little odd since we've already had that renaissance of those style of games a few years ago.
Well, because the issue is those games came about because it wasn't being covered at that time. There was no competition in for Tomb Raider. They weren't making games for that. They weren't making those style of games. And then it continued, and that's why Uncharted was able to come in and like kind of take that Indiana Jones style of adventure and run with it, because there was no competition there. Yeah. And now I think it's easy to say that those are bigger names in that style of genre today than Indiana Jones is. Indiana Jones is a classic, but in the gaming world, it's like that's the problem, is it's already kind of been done. The shoes have already been filled, and they've been filled so good. So, like it's really, it just feels like this is like a nostalgic throwback for like, hey, 80s kids. Yeah. Y'all play games, right? Like, come on in. Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's just a lot to live up to. And I mean, we've had this conversation before. I'm so franchise fatigued in general that I get annoyed seeing, I get annoyed for nostalgia bait. Yes. A lot of people love it, but I've gotten to a point where I'm tired of nostalgia bait. Like it was great for a few years. Oh, like it takes me back to my childhood. Oh, that thing that I liked when I was a child. But it's gotten to this point where it doesn't feel like it's even like to appease people anymore. It feels like lazy, or it feels we're out of ideas and this franchise worked, so we're just going to keep making it work. And that's what this feels like to me.
And it sucks because I don't want to like discredit Machine Games and like what they could create, because they might blow it out of the hit it out of the park, and it's gonna be a great game. And I have faith in Machine Games for sure, because I mean they rebooted Wolfenstein, like not the most beloved game, especially when you compare it to like Doom and everything, but like that the new franchise is like super really well received, well regarded, and everything.
Really, that is the thing. I'm not like I feel like when I shit on things sometimes, like it's never the developer, like.
And so like I don't want this to come out the wrong way, because but I also agree with you, and this might go on a different other tangent, but I agree with you with the nostalgia bait, because we talked about this, but like the Space Jam movie, it's the most like egregious like nostalgia bait that I've seen in a really long time. Nothing against, LeBron James, nothing against Looney Tunes and everything like that. I love the original Space Jam, but I think it also, the reason why people like it so much is because we grew up watching the Looney Tunes. And you can't tell me anybody within the past 10 years grew up watching Looney Tunes that is going to be so excited for Space Jam with LeBron James.
It's two things. It's that. Yes. It's the generation. Yeah. like, yeah, exactly like you said, Looney Tunes was still being played on Cartoon Network and like older like TV channels when we were kids. So it made sense. We were around it. We saw it. The other thing that people forget is why it was so good was it was an absolute technological mindfuck.
It was.
That you had these cartoons that looked that good with real people.
Yes.
That was what made it magic.
Yeah.
That is what made it so good. It wasn't that it wasn't it was just like it was one of those like what is it where just everything explodes at the right time.
Yeah.
Like in that generation, in that time, like we didn't know that was possible. It was because like the 90s were such an experimental time because technology was advancing so fast.
Yeah.
That's also, besides even just the generational stuff, what made that such a hit.
Yeah.
Like today, that's not impressive at all.
Yeah.
So like it's not impressive like it was. It's not interesting and quirky like it was. I don't know anyone who's really asking for it.
It's so irrelevant, and it's like we said, it's
everything
just,
about
it's just,
it.
It's just a greedy cash grab of nostalgia, and I don't want this to come out the wrong, but that's like the same similar feeling that I get from this.
Totally agree.
It's just because I have no connection to any, like, I don't have like a soft spot for Indiana Jones as well. I didn't grow up watching it. Like I just recently watched, the first one, and it was fine, but like, oh my gosh, that score, they just used it every single time. And I could not unhear it once you hear it. Go back and watch Indiana Jones and tell me that score does not get annoying.
It does not play every 5 minutes.
Seriously, anytime he does anything, he ties his shoes. Dun, 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 dun. Anyways, Massive Games working on an open world Star Wars game is a lot more interesting in my opinion, not only because it's Star Wars, but because Massive Games in general, they're a good studio. They did Division, and arguably they make really good open world games. New York and DC were really well done, really well like built, basically condensed, and like monuments were there, everything was there, really, really, really cool. So I have high hopes for Massive Games. I doubt it'll be a looter shooter style of Star Wars game RPG thing. I think it's literally just a single player open world RPG game for Massive. So yeah.
Really quick before people come at us too, because Star Wars is obviously nostalgia bait as well. And,
yeah.
But there's two things with this one.
Okay.
Star Wars has been revamped for years. Every like 20 years they've done some sort of revamp. Second, the difference between Indiana Jones being a kind of nostalgia bait and this nostalgia bait is that Indiana Jones is literally the whole focus is one character. The whole focus is him being an adventurer and him going into the tombs and getting the artifact, right? At least Star Wars has not even an entire universe. It has universes.
Yeah.
It has multiple planets. Like, so that's where I still have the franchise fatigue, but Star Wars has so much more opportunity to not be the same freaking story over and over again, which was what was so annoying about the trilogy.
Yeah.
And it's not just one character. Like Star Wars has so much opportunity to be more than just. That's where I'm like, I'm okay with them.
Yeah.
Kind of really writing out this franchise because there's just so much more to it. It's not about one character. Like the Indiana Jones is literally called Indiana Jones. It's about him.
I think sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, and I was just gonna say like, so that's like where like, yeah, like the Massive Games is open world thing is like these sort of things are exciting because it gives so much opportunity for world building. And like I said, like in these Star Wars games, you have so much more you can focus on and so many, just so much more opportunity. And yeah, like you said, the worlds that they've created have that are real places. We know how accurate and beautiful and just good that was.
Yeah.
So being able to take something that's not even, that they don't even have to copy and kind of run with this like imagination of it.
Yeah.
Like they got a lot to fill, but
yeah. No, and you hit it right on the head with that, like especially because like the perfect example now is like not everything has to be about the Jedi. Not everything has to be about these mainline characters, and not everything has to be about lineage, right? Because of Mandalorian. Like Mandalorian. Like we always knew about bounty hunters and Mandalore specifically and everything, but like just being able to have like that section of the world, basically, now you're getting expanded into like the universe as far as like not only like their race, but also like we find out, spoilers, that they're a part of the Night Watch. The Night Watch. So he was and that was like a whole other thing about like Mandalore and everything. So everything he thought was just blown out the window, basically, from what he growing up, basically.
What he believed.
Mm-hmm. So it's just like stories like that is like super interesting in the sense of like there's pockets of those kind of stories like hidden, like you said, everywhere around the galaxy. It doesn't have to be the mainline characters and clones and Palpatines and everything. So yeah. Let's talk about games that now with everything happening, with this deal happening or not happening anymore as far as EA is concerned. We probably won't see these games until their contract is done in 2 years. So this massive game, and maybe even the Indiana Jones games, depending on what the deal technically was, if it was limited just to to Star Wars, but we probably won't see it until 2 more years.
Yeah, it sounds like the deal, since they're able to announce these before their contract's up, is their deal was 10 years of probably releasing.
Yeah.
Which I guess it makes sense that they are able to technically not break a contract if there's other people developing. Maybe they just can't release until that contract's up.
Exactly.
But it's perfect because they're giving themselves the 2 years. Here you go. You guys have 2 to 3 years. Start developing. We'll get your windows open for release after this contract's up.
Exactly. So now that it has been lifted, I don't even know what to call it. Yeah, I don't even know what to call it. Like
the contract's will be coming to an end.
Yes, now that is coming to an end, let's take a look at some of the games that maybe some studios can work on. Tim Schafer is down at Microsoft right now, and he's currently working on Psychonauts 2, and that's basically almost done. They said that the game is pretty much done. They just got to clear out some bugs and all that other stuff, and it'll most likely come out this year. So it's actually perfect time for him to be able to jump back into making other games, as far as like, maybe continuing the Grim Fandango series or another installment in the Monkey Island series, Full Throttle, whatever it may be. I know those kind of games aren't really like the most captivating things that people want to play right now, but they're classics.
They're options.
And yeah, and it's just something that,
there's history there.
Yeah.
Proven history.
Exactly. Something that I wrote down here, but I actually, now thinking about it, don't understand why BioWare didn't do this sooner, which was make a KOTOR game, another KOTOR game. They just needed to stop with Anthem, and like, thank you for Mass Effect, and thank you for bringing Mass Effect Legends, and maybe continuing continuing Mass Effect as well. But I think Anthem needs to die, and they need to just focus on Star Wars, which I don't know why they didn't just focus on Star Wars.
Contract.
They're a part of EA.
Oh my God. Yeah, they are, aren't they?
Saying, yeah, like they're a part of EA.
Why? Yeah. See, why did Anthem even happen?
I don't know.
Oh, because wasn't Anthem like 8 years though in the making? That's why.
Oh, that's why. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was already,
because they didn't know what they were making until they EA or E3 of that year.
That's why. But yeah, they should have just been like, let's just sweep this under the rug, or they should have put a Star Wars coat of paint on that.
So yeah, BioWare, either make another KOTOR, or you can do a reimagining or remake, kind of like Final Fantasy 2 or Final Fantasy 7 or Resident Evil 2 of KOTOR. Like, that would be amazing. Like, especially with a new combat system, because in that game, it's a dialogue, but the combat is like you click on a person, you click on a move, and then it just auto does it. It's very like Final Fantasy-ish.
Yeah.
But yeah, a new modern combat system would be really. I thought about this. So Arcane Studios, the people who did Dishonored and currently working on Deathloop, once they're done doing Deathloop, maybe they can do a first-person RPG Star Wars game. They're really good with like Dishonored. Like RPG is kind of like an RPG where you spec out your characters on how you want to play. You either want to blink farther or jump higher, or be more stealthy, or like just throw traps and bombs everywhere. Imagine that. And for those of you who are familiar with Jedi Outcast, imagine that. Like, because Jedi Outcast was a first-person Star Wars game where you have guns and blasters and all this other stuff. But then like once you progress through the story, you actually become a Jedi and you get a lightsaber, and then you become third person, and then you just go through it with lightsabers. But you can always switch back and forth between them. Not saying that like it would switch back and forth between that, but just like Dishonored had really good like gameplay with like swords and stuff. So that would be so cool. Like when I was writing this, I was like, oh, that would be so awesome. Anything from id Software, they do Doom. They clearly have been doing really well with Doom and Doom Eternal. Maybe a first-person 4-player Bad Batch game with Clone Wars, the Bad Batch. Each character has their own specific skill set that they have. And maybe do a 4-player co-op game similar like Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood or whatever. In the same kind of, or even the same similarity of like Republic Commando, which Republic Commando is one of the most like beloved Star Wars first-person shooter games that they did right before they got bought out by EA. So I think that would be really, really cool. And then I don't know, anything that has to do with Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, is probably going to happen. Anything that has to do with Ahsoka is probably going to happen. Anything that has to do with Boba Fett is probably going to happen. It just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what studios would do what with it. I'll leave that up to you guys and your imaginations, but it's just kind of exciting that we can potentially see some video games surrounding these cool characters. Respawn, like I said, they can continue working on Fallen Order 2, or maybe even a spin-off game where you play as Ahsoka in the same style as like Fallen Order, because I think that would be really cool. Or add her as DLC, or add her into the universe's main game in the mainline games and stuff. And I feel like Battlefront 2 has gotten so much better, and I know that they stopped production on that game in order to focus on Battlefield 5 or 6. But I feel like DICE can take a shot at Battlefront 3 in the future or something. They did good. And I think they learned from their mistakes as far as not putting microtransactions in it.
Well, and that all goes into the issues with the game. Again, is probably not DICE, it's EA.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the issues always come in. Not usually the people making the game. It's the people publishing.
The only thing, and we talked about it just a couple seconds ago or minutes ago, but the only thing that worries me about this is franchise fatigue. This, seeing all these, writing all this out, I was like, this is exciting, but at the same time, it's also kind of giving me a little bit of flashbacks as to what happened when the first go around, when they were doing their Star Wars movies and everything, when they were releasing their mainline ones and their spin-offs and everything like that, and then Solo bombed. And they kind of took a step back, and especially with the news of last year with that we didn't get to talk about, but they announced a ton of shows, right?
That list of shows gave me anxiety, and not in a good way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, again, this is a universe that can sustain that and have like, and be able to like support the multiple stories in it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I already know I'm going to hate Star Wars in about 4 years. Like, I'm going to be so over it. I'm already kind of getting there.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of where I'm getting at too. So the shows included are like
really quick, which is crazy because it makes sense for me to get fatigued because I've never been a huge Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Like, I like it. I enjoy what I've seen, but you love it. So
yeah.
If you're worried about it, that's also scary.
Yeah, so the Ahsoka show, Bad Batch show, which that one's gonna be done by the people who did Clone Wars, which the Obi-Wan series, and I love Ian McGregor. I love Obi-Wan's his character, his portrayal of Obi-Wan. I really, really enjoyed it in the trilogy. The prequels, Hayden Christensen coming back. There's literally no reason why. Like he's in a costume. He's in the suit. Like, we're gonna have flashbacks of him going back and talking to Padme about sand. Like we don't need that.
It needs the romance. It needs the sand.
Yeah. A Rogue Squadron movie is done by Patty Jenkins, which I actually find that promising. Rangers of the New Republic and the Acolyte, which the Acolyte is during the Old Republic. So this is really old Star Wars stuff. So that and that's just a little bit of them, which on paper I don't feel like they would not do well. And like, I'm saying that with hopefulness in my heart, because the last time we saw a list like this, it was, during the Solo and, after Rogue One and Solo and Obi-Wan movie and a Boba Fett movie and in all of these like individual character movies, and it goes back into what we were saying. All those movies were just a nostalgia grab.
And then too, like, yeah, I know everyone said Solo was not good, but I liked Kira a whole lot, and I'm never gonna know what the fuck happens with that because it didn't do good. So like on top of like everything else, it's like the one or two things I'm like, oh, I'm intrigued. It's like we have a million other things over here, and I'm like, no, I want to know what happens there. It's just like, it's just funny because I'm like, oh, I was like, I'm very intrigued. I can't wait to see what happens with Kira, and then I'm like, oh, that's never happening. It just got. Yeah, so like, yeah, that first go around, there were some things that bombed, and so like literally went from like, oh yeah, here's a whole list. Oh, it's that one. Yeah, erase it.
You're so right though. That was I was really very curious as to what was gonna happen after that. Way more than I was. Than another Han Solo movie, but I guess we'll never see it.
Rip.
Yeah.
F and chat.
Yeah. But. Yeah, I just worry that they're getting the success of, they're getting the high of the Mandalorian. They're like,
and it's one show, like
working,
chill.
It's working good. All right, now we gotta hit the ground running, and they're just gonna book it, and they're just gonna crash and burn again.
It's like they don't realize that there's like too much of a good thing, or too much of like one good thing doesn't equate to like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's a bit much.
Yes.
Disney.
Only time will tell. But that's the entire news story of this week, basically. Cyberpunk did come out with an apology, which I feel like we talk about Cyberpunk.
Speaking of franchise fatigue, we're tired of talking. We're actually tired of talking about Cyberpunk now that it's out and now that it's been a disaster.
Yeah. So that happened.
The only shout out is
oh yeah.
I called it. Your girl called it. Yeah. Pokemon Snap getting a release date. I cried again. I literally cried.
Yeah, April 30th is the release date, and yeah, I it's funny that last episode we were talking
about it in the universe.
Our most anticipated game of the year, and you were like Pokemon Snap. I was like, it's not even announced that it's gonna come out this year.
I knew.
You knew in your heart.
I could feel it in my gut.
Yeah.
I was like, it's happening. I put it into you put good things into the universe, and 20% of the time they'll come back.
Well, there we go. So that's all we have for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. I hope you had a good start of the year, had a good new year in general. Make sure to come back next week, because next week we're going to talk about Resident Evil 8 and all the news that's going to happen.
Oh, that's news to me.
Well, it's
I forgot that there was that news thing. You're just like, come back. I'm like, he's already got it all planned out. I had no idea.
Oh no, I'm ready. I love Resident Evil, and I'm so excited to see this whatever they have planned. And yeah, and I know the internet will be excited as well, and they're ready, and because their thirst for tall vampire lady is real.
I don't get it. I don't understand.
Who knows? Like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. Let me know what you guys think about the Star Wars news, the Lucasfilm Games news. Are you excited for an Indiana Jones games? Does it grab your nostalgia
by the nuts and give it a squeeze? It's like,
okay, no.
Baited. Are you gonna cut that?
I don't know. Does Indiana Jones hold a special place in your heart that would make you
nut?
That makes you really excited for this news? Are you also in agreement with us that you're kind of worried about the fear of franchise fatigue coming with Star Wars? Let me know in the comments below, and we will see you guys next week. Hope you guys have a good week. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.